Nice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States.
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going.
Jasmine Crockett did not come to that hearing to play games. No pleasantries, no political theater, no pretending. This was a normal oversight hearing where answers would actually be given and the public would walk away with clarity. She came in with one objective and she made it clear in the very first seconds. Pam Bondi was not there to answer anything, and Crockett wasn't going to waste everyone's time pretending otherwise. That opening move alone changed everything. Because suddenly, the question wasn't, what will Bondi say? The question became, how bad does it have to get before a sitting member of Congress refuses to even ask the witness questions? Think about that for a second. Really think about it. And then, Crockett twisted the knife. Instead of directing her questions at Bondi, she turned to a colleague. And she started asking the most basic moral questions you can ask a human being. Right or wrong? Raping children. Right or wrong? Killing innocent people. Right or wrong? Enriching yourself while serving as President of the United States. Simple questions. Questions any person on the street could answer without hesitation. But that was exactly the point. Crockett was showing the entire country, in real time, that it had become easier to get a straight moral answer from a colleague sitting nearby than from the Attorney General of the United States. That's not just embarrassing, that is devastating. Because what she was really saying underneath all of it was this: we have reached a point where the top law enforcement official in this country cannot be trusted to give a straight answer on the most basic questions of right and wrong. And once that point lands, really lands, everything else starts to crumble around it. Then she went after Bondi's credibility directly. And this part was ruthless.
In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps.
Crockett didn't just call her evasive, she mocked the performance. She reminded the room that when you sit before Congress as a witness, your one job, is to answer questions, not dodge them, not run out the clock, not act like you're the one running the hearing. She even invoked the legal standard of being non-responsive, essentially telling everyone watching that Bondi was failing the most basic test of testimony. And that combination, politically slippery and professionally unserious, for someone sitting atop the Department of Justice, that's about as damaging as it gets. But Crockett wasn't done. Not even close. She turned away from Bondi entirely and she addressed the survivors in the room. And in that moment, the hearing stopped feeling like a political cage match. It became something sharper, something with real moral weight. She told them they were not victims, they were survivors. And she said they had shown more courage and more moral clarity in their pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice had shown in months. That line landed like a hammer. Because it wasn't just an attack on Bondi anymore. It was an indictment of the institution she leads. Crockett was telling this country in plain language, the people who have suffered the most are carrying more dignity, more honesty, and more decency than the people who are supposed to be delivering justice. And that was just the opening act. Because once Crockett finished dismantling Bondi's credibility as a witness, she shifted to something even bigger. What the Justice Department has become under Bondi's leadership. This is where it stopped being personal and started being institutional. Crockett pulled out Bondi's own written testimony, her own stated goals when she took office: end the weaponization of justice, return the department to its core mission. And Crockett's response was savage. She said Bondi hadn't just failed at both of those goals, she had intentionally done the exact opposite. Not incompetence, not negligence, intentional betrayal of the office, of the mission, of the public. And then Crockett built her case piece by piece. Taxpayer money being burned to target journalists, power being used against critics, reporters, political enemies, Don Lemon, Georgia Fort, dismissed cases, rejected arrests, failed prosecutions, judges pushing back, juries pushing back, and then doing it again. This wasn't one bad call, this was a pattern. Go after the wrong people, lose in court, embarrass the institution, repeat. Journalists' homes raided, students threatened, protesters targeted, tech companies pressured. Every new example made the Justice Department look less like a law enforcement institution and more like a political weapon with a badge. And that is the core of Crockett's argument. Pam Bondi did not de-weaponize justice, she sharpened it and aimed it at the wrong people. But then, the hearing crossed into genuinely explosive territory. Jeffrey Epstein. The moment that name entered the room, everything shifted. Because now this wasn't just about a bad witness or a compromised DOJ. Now the question on the table was whether this administration was actively participating in a cover-up. And Crockett knew exactly how to handle it. She didn't come out screaming wild accusations. She did something far more calculated. She said she didn't know exactly what the president may or may not have done. But unlike this administration, she believes facts matter.
ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "this is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind you
Time
that
belongs
you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to
from
even acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
That line was surgical. It gave her the high ground while going directly for the jugular. Then she laid out the record. References to Trump, references to Mar-a-Lago, files, interactions, documents that she argued demand real scrutiny. And the most powerful part wasn't just what she maimed. It was the implication underneath every word. There is enough in the record to raise serious questions. And the real scandal isn't just what might be in those files. It's why this administration seems so desperate to make sure nobody looks. Once the word cover-up entered the room, Crockett didn't let go of it. Complicity, obstruction of justice, voter data, bribery allegations, unconstitutional payments, corruption that runs wide and deep. By the time she finished, she wasn't describing isolated incidents anymore. She was painting a portrait of an administration swimming in misconduct, with Bondi standing at the very top of the legal structure, running cover for all of it. And then came the closing argument. Crockett didn't end with a critique. She didn't end with a question. She ended with a verdict. Pam Bondi will be remembered as one of the worst attorneys general in American history. Not because she had a rough hearing, not because she stumbled on a hard question, but because, in Crockett's words, she chose. She chose obstruction over justice, corruption over law, loyalty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. That is not a political attack. That is a closing argument delivered in front of the entire country. And then, as if on cue, Bondi responded in exactly the way Crockett had predicted from the very first sentence. She didn't meet the substance. She didn't dismantle the accusations calmly and with authority. She didn't restore credibility to the office. She pivoted. She deflected. She changed the subject. She started throwing other names into the room, trying to shift the blame somewhere, anywhere else. And in doing so, she proved every single point Crockett had just made. Because the entire argument from the opening seconds was this: Bondi is not here to answer questions. She is here to dodge them. And by the time it was over, that's exactly what it looked like. That is why this exchange spread the way it did. That's why people watched it over and over. That's why it felt bigger than a single viral clip from a congressional hearing. Because Jasmine Crockett didn't just go after one person. He stripped away the title. He stripped away the office. He stripped away the institutional authority and left the public staring at a witness who couldn't answer the most fundamental questions without retreating into deflection, outrage, and political theater. And once the country sees that image clearly, it is very, very hard to unsee. Jasmine Crockett did not come to that hearing to play games. No pleasantries, no political theater, no pretending. This was a normal oversight hearing where answers would actually be given and the public would walk away with clarity. She came in with one objective, and she made it clear in the very first seconds. Pam Bondi was not there to answer anything, and Crockett wasn't going to waste everyone's time pretending otherwise. That opening move alone changed everything. Because suddenly, the question wasn't, what will Bondi say? The question became, how bad does it have to get before a sitting member of Congress refuses to even ask the witness questions? Think about that for a second. Really think about it. And then Crockett twisted the knife. Instead of directing her questions at Bondi, she turned to a colleague. And she started asking the most basic moral questions you can ask a human being. Right or wrong, raping children? Right or wrong, killing innocent people? Right or wrong, enriching yourself while serving as president?